Good afternoon everyone. Welcome to the daily news analysis of NEXT IAS. Today is 5th August 2025. So let's start with the important topics of the day which we are going to discuss. The first is with respect to the Global Plastic Treaty and resumption of its talks in Geneva meet. Second is with respect to the fears about ethanol blended petrol and government clarification regarding this. Third is with respect to the invention of the radioactive horns for the rhinos and its implication for their conservation. Fourth is regarding the Supreme Court ruling regarding the powers of pollution control boards and its implications. The last one, decoded section, is about the Article 370, its abrogation and 6 years of its abrogation and its likely impact on the Jammu Kashmir development. So let's start with the today's episode. So Global Plastic Treaty. So what is the backdrop of this particular news? Geneva. There has been resumption of the meet in Geneva for the conclusion of the Global Plastic Treaty. The talks are ongoing with respect to this. This is important from the perspective of the environmental conservation and global efforts to counter the pollution of plastic, which is causing tremendous challenges or harmful effect to the humans as well as the marine organisms. So what is the, let's go into the detail of the news. On August of 5, more than 190 countries will convene in Geneva for the second session of the 5th meeting of Intergovernmental Negotiation Committee, that is INC 5 of the United Nations, aiming to resolve the differences and work toward legally binding global plastics treaty that seeks to end the plastic pollution, including in the marine environment. So today in Geneva, more than 190 countries will meet for the second session of the 5th meeting of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee of the United Nations. And what is the objective of this particular meeting? To resolve the differences and work toward conclusion of legally binding global plastic treaty that seeks to end the plastic pollution that is causing hazard to entire humanity as well as our planet, including in marine environment. So let's start. Basically, let's go into the detail of the news, that is Global Plastic Treaty negotiation. Basically, this negotiation will resume from the earlier meet in December 2025, which was happened in Busan in South Korea, where the talks had collapsed due to the differences between the member nations. So what were the main point of disagreement between the different member nations? The first is regarding the imposing of cap on the polymer production. Basically, plastics are a form of polymer and they are produced from the various hydrocarbon materials. So there should be whether there should be the cap on polymer production or not was the main point of contention between the different nations. Another point of difference or disagreement was elimination of the harmful chemicals that are used in the plastic manufacturing. The third was with respect to the phasing out of the hazardous plastic products that are causing harmful effects to the humanity as well as the marine environment. So what are the issues with respect to the current draft that had been drafted in the Busan meeting in South Korea, which occurred in December 2025? Basically, it contains this particular draft, which was drafted in the Busan, South Korea, contains more than 370 brackets, that is the points of differences or areas of the disagreement between the member countries. Basically, this treaty was initiated after the 2022 resolution of United Nations Environmental Program, which meeting was happened in Nairobi, Kenya, and that particular outcome of that meeting was consensus to develop the global rules to end the plastic pollution. So this particular meeting was the outcome of the 2022 resolution in Nairobi at the United Nations Environmental Assembly. And what was the goal of that particular meeting? To develop the global rules that would end the plastic pollution, which is threatening entire planet as well as the humanity. So if successfully adopted, this treaty, that is the Global Plastic Treaty, would be the most consequential one on the environmental issues since 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. So this is the current status of the talks of the Global Plastic Treaty. Now let's go into certain basics. Rising plastic crisis. Basically, global plastic production was 234 million tons in 2000, and it doubled, almost double in 2019 to 460 million tons. And it is likely, as per the United Nations Environmental Program report, it is likely to triple if there is a business as usual scenario by 2060. In case of plastic waste, this was about the global plastic production. Now let's go into the figures related to the plastic waste production. The global plastic waste rose from 156 million ton in 2000 to 353 million tons in 2019 as per the OECD report. Now, so what is the cost of this plastic waste that is there on the humanity? As per the OECD report, or sorry, as per the Lancet report, this is almost $1.5 trillion annually. Plastic causes various diseases and death from infancy to the old age and responsible for the health related economic losses which amount to the 1.5 trillion annually as per the Lancet report. So what is the status? Let's go into the status of plastic pollution in India. What is the statistics with respect to the plastic pollution? Basically, as per the report of Nature which was published in the journal Nature, India is the world's top plastic polluter, which releases almost 9.3 million tons of plastic annually, amounting to roughly 1/5 of the global plastic emissions. So India, as per the Nature journal report, India is the world's top plastic polluter and releases almost 9.3 million tons of plastic annually. Out of this, 5.8 million tons of plastic is incinerated, and whereas 3.5 million tons of plastic is released into environment as a debris. So each year we are releasing, India is releasing 3.5 million tons of plastic in environment. When it comes to per capita production, it is 0.12 kilograms per capita per day. India accounts for almost 1/5 of the total plastic waste that is generated on the planet. So this is important with respect to the status or statistics of the plastic pollution with respect to India. Now what are the impacts of plastic pollution? Impacts of plastic pollution, basically let's go into the human health impact that are caused by the plastic pollution. The first is contaminated seafood. We all of know that seafood is one of the most important part of the human diet in coastal areas as well as all over the world. So when it comes to plastic pollution, it causes contamination of the seafood, and these microplastics which are generated by the degeneration of the plastic, it found in over 100 marine species, many of which are consumed by the humans, and these microplastic cause the inflammation or health issues like inflammation, genetic damage or organ toxicity, potentially leading to the cancer as well as the heart diseases. So this is one of the most prominent health related impact of the contaminated seafood by microplastic. So what is the next? Chemical exposure. Basically, plastics which are used in the food packaging release bisphenol A, BPA, which affects the brain and reproductive development, especially in the fetus and children. So the impact of the plastic in children is even more severe, which can retard their brain development as well as the reproductive development is also affected in the adult humans. Now let's talk about the threat that is caused to the wildlife by the plastic pollution. Basically, marine animals such as seabirds, turtles, whales, fish suffer from the ingestion, suffocation as well as the entanglement in the plastic, which often result in the starvation or internal injury to these organisms. So what are the kind of threats by plastic? First is ingestion, thus entering into the food chain. Second is suffocation because of the entanglement, and third is entanglement. So floating plastics basically also transport the invasive alien species, thus disrupt the marine biodiversity and disruption of the food webs. So this is another important consequence of the plastic pollution, that is transport of the invasive alien species from one region to the another region. Now let's go into the impact of the plastic pollution into the food chain. Basically, plastic bind with toxic pollutants and enter the food chain through the bioaccumulation, where the toxins and additives accumulate in the animal tissues, posing risk to the predators including humans. So basically, plastic, when they undergo degeneration, convert into microplastic, and they bind themselves with the toxic pollutants that are already there, and thus they enter into the food chain through bioaccumulation. They cause bioaccumulation, where toxins and additives accumulate in the animal tissues, basically the fatty tissues, posing risk to the predators, including the top predators like humans. So, what is the contribution of the plastic for the climate change that is causing the global warming? Basically, most of the plastic we use today are made from the fossil fuels like ethylene or propylene. So, the production of the plastic, their transportation or degradation releases greenhouse gases. As I have already discussed that almost 5.3 million tons of plastic that is being produced in India is incinerated every year. So, imagine the release of greenhouse gases from that incineration activity, and thus when those greenhouse gases are released like methane or ethylene, they fuel the feedback loop, which in turn again accelerate the global warming. So, more plastic means more fossil fuel use and greater climate impact in terms of global warming. So, these are the harmful effects of the plastic which we are going to discuss, which we have discussed. Now, let us go into the what is the plastic waste, what are the government initiatives or government steps to tackle the plastic waste in India. So, first is Plastic Waste Management Rule 2016. This is one of the most important initiative taken by the NDA government after that they came to power. That is a very detailed plastic management rule, waste management rule. So, what is the objective of these rules? Basically, minimizing the plastic waste generation and preventing their littering. So, for that they have introduced this extended producer responsibility. This is the most important, although little bit controversial provision. Extended producer responsibility. It places the responsibility for plastic packaging and waste on producers, importers and brand owners. So, this was the brand owners which were supposed to produce the plastic, they were given the responsibility of the packaging the waste of the plastic that their brand is going to create. Okay. Second is with respect to the thickness. It has set the minimum thickness of 50 microns for the plastic carry bags. Earlier, the thickness of the plastic carry bag was even less, that is 10 microns or 20 microns, which become, because of that it was very cheaper to create plastic or to produce plastic. But because since this particular minimum thickness has increased to the 50 microns, now the plastic production becomes more costly, thus discouraging the plastic production or manufacturing. Third is with respect to the jurisdictional changes. Basically, India's plastic management rules expanded the rules to include the rural areas, including the Gram Panchayat, who were held for the implementation of this plastic waste management rule. Now, next is with respect to segregation. Introduced mandatory waste segregation at the source, especially in the urban societies or in large factories. Now, there had been a time to time amendment in those plastic waste management rule, and important amendments took place in 2021, that is Plastic Waste Management Amendment Rules 2021. So, what were those rules? Basically, single use plastics. Basically, these 2021 rules prohibited specific single use plastics with low utility and high littering potential from July 1, 2022. So, from 1st of July 2022, single use plastic of specific single use plastics with low utility and high littering potential were banned. Second, carry bag thickness. So, carry bag thickness increased minimum thickness from 75 to 75 microns in 2021 and to 120 microns in December 2022. Thus, again manufacturing of plastic became more costly because of the increase in the thickness of the plastic. Now, let us go into the Plastic Waste Management Amendment Rules 2024. So, what were the important provisions of these rules? Basically, expanded definitions. It broadened the definition of importer and producer to making them responsible for the extended producer responsibility. Then certification requirement. It mandated the manufacturers of compostable or biodegradable plastics to obtain the certification from Central Pollution Control Board and to adhere to FSSAI regulation. It mandated the manufacturers who were producing the biodegradable plastics to obtain certification so that some standardization element can be introduced in the manufacturing. Now, next is with respect to labeling. It required specific labeling for compostable and biodegradable plastic so that their use can be encouraged. Now, waste reporting. It mandated that manufacturing process and report pre-consumer plastic waste to be reported. So, what is the international legislative framework with respect to the plastic production or plastic pollution control? Basically, existing global laws on marine plastic pollution must be upheld and reinforced. So, which are those important marine plastic pollution convention? The first is important London Convention or the London Protocol and 1971 Protocol to it, that is MARPOL. So, these are these convention aim to prevent the pollution from the ship-based waste dumping, including the plastic one. So, let us go into the practice question of the day, that is with reference to the India's plastic waste management rules and recent amendment, consider the following statement. Please solve this MCQ. Let us go into the next topic of the day, that is the fears about the ethanol blended petrol. So, what is the backdrop of this news? Public concerns have emerged about the potential impact of the 20% ethanol blending and its likely impact on the vehicles including their engines, and the clarification regarding those concerns given by the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. So, what is the relevance important from GS3 infrastructure energy perspective? Now, let us go into the detail of the news. So, as India is pushing ahead with the ethanol blended petrol program, also with the objective of cutting the emissions and putting the reliance on energy imports. So, simultaneously the apprehensions have been raised particularly by the owners of the older vehicles whose vehicles are not adapted to the 20% ethanol blended petrol. So, what are the fears that are being raised by the owners or various organizations? That is that ethanol blended petrol, that is 20% ethanol blended petrol will cause lower fuel economy, damage to the engine, reduce the vehicle lifespan and lead to the expensive repair, causing economic hardships. So, these are the fears that have been raised by the owners of the older vehicles. In response to this, government, that is the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, has dismissed most of these concerns as unfounded or groundless. These are not backed by the scientific evidence or any kind of expert analysis. This is the clarification that has been given by the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. So, what government has stated that ethanol blending is a technically sound procedure and it is a forward looking environmentally responsible measure to reduce the import dependence on the crude petroleum. Now, let us go into certain basics. What is the ethanol blended petrol program? Basically, this particular program was launched in 2003 by Vajpayee government to promote the ethanol blending in petrol and to reduce the import dependency and the consequent emissions in the environment. So, what is the policy target? Basically, National Policy on Biofuels, which was released in 2018 and amended in 2022, it advanced 20% blending of ethanol in petrol target to 2025. Earlier, this target was 2030, but now as per the amendment in 2022, that target was preponed to the 2025-26. Now, for the production of this ethanol, basically what are the different kinds of feedstocks that are being used? The first is sugarcane juice, sugar beet, cassava, damaged or surplus food grains, rotten potatoes, etc. So, please remember this: sugarcane juice, sugar beet, cassava, damaged or surplus food grains, rotten potatoes. So, basically there is also the purpose of ensuring farmer support during the surplus season, so that damaged or surplus food grain can also be utilized for the production of ethanol, thus ultimately giving more income to the farmers. So, what is the significance of the ethanol blending, or what is the necessity of the ethanol blending petrol in India? The first is regarding the import of the crude oil. So India as of now is the third largest crude oil consumer globally. As of now, India is the third largest crude oil consumer after China and US. So in the fiscal year 2024, India's crude oil consumption reached in 233 million metric tons. 233 million metric tons, and over 85% of the crude oil needs in India are met through imports. So when it comes to India, in 2024, the crude oil import bill was $132 billion US dollars. So if we go for ethanol blending, it will help to reduce the import dependency, that is almost 85% of its needs, cut the carbon emission. It is one of the prime goal under the Paris Climate Treaty, and promotion of energy self-reliance, that is almost only the 15% of energy which we consume, we are able to produce it, and 85% through import. So the promotion of energy self-reliance is one of the important goal. So this is the necessity of the ethanol blending in India. So what are the concerns raised up because of the ethanol blending? The first is regarding the compatibility of the vehicles with ethanol blended petrol. So E20 fuel, that is 20% of ethanol plus 80% of petrol, was achieved in 2024, 5 years ahead of the 2030 target. So earlier that particular target as per the national biofuel policy was 2030. Later on it got preponed to the 2025, and we have achieved this target in 2024 only, E20. Now newer cars, that is post April 2023, those manufactured after the April 2023 are built to handle the E20 ethanol blended petrol, 20% ethanol blended petrol, but the older cars may not be tuned to the E20 petrol, leading to the potential engine corrosion as suggested by the, or as advised by the experts, and concerns in the two-wheelers due to the material incompatibility to handle the E20 ethanol blended petrol of 20%. So these are the concerns raised by the vehicle owners. Now what is the impact on the fuel economy of this ethanol blended petrol? So basically when it comes to ethanol, it is having lower energy density than the petrol. Ethanol is having lower energy density than the petrol, and government itself has acknowledged marginal drop in the mileage of the fuel. So what is the reason behind this? Basically the calorific value of ethanol blended fuel is higher than the gasoline or petrol, which means that more fuel is burnt for the similar performance. So since the calorific value of ethanol blended petrol is higher than the gasoline, that is pure petrol, which results in burning of more fuel, that is more petrol for the similar performance or similar journey, resulting thus brings down the fuel economy or mileage of the vehicle. And as per the government statistics, it is 1 to 2% for E10, that is 10% of ethanol blended petrol designed four-wheelers, and in case of others which are not collaborated for the E20 petrol, it is 3 to 6%, that is 3 to 6% drop in the mileage. So what government suggests for this particular drop can be minimized by better engine tuning, and means as per the government suggestion, there can be modifications done in the engine of the two-wheelers as well as the four-wheelers, so that the engine gets in better tune with the E20 petrol, that is ethanol blended petrol, and use of E20 competent materials in the vehicle, so that it becomes easy for vehicle to adapt to this ethanol blended petrol. So these are the fuel economy impacts as well as the suggestions given by the government for the adoption of the E20 ethanol blended petrol of 20%. So the other aspect, if we go into the regarding the consumer awareness about the present status of the ethanol blended petrol and the malpractices that have been done by the fuel stations. So what are those malpractices? Consumers have flagged poor transparency at petrol pumps about the ethanol blended levels. So there have been reports that petrol pumps are not displaying what is the exact percentage of the petrol that has been blended with ethanol, whether it is a 10%, 20%, there is no clarification or any kind of display, no clear labeling or information regarding this. no discount offered for the ethanol blended petrol despite the lower energy output. And since this petrol is causing lower energy output, there is expectation that there should be some kind of discount should be given, but there so far there is no any kind of discount offered either by the government or fuel stations. Now let us go into the manufacturing sector, that is auto industry readiness for this E20 petrol. So as per the Society for Indian Automobile Manufacturer, that is SIAM, E20 compliant vehicles have been rolled out since April 2023. So our industry, automobile industry, is quite quick to adapt to this E20 petrol, ethanol blended petrol, and manufacturers have started using upgraded material which are suitable for the ethanol blends. So by and large, our Indian automobile industry has successfully and quickly adopted to the 20% of ethanol blended petrol. Now what are the major support initiatives or measures taken by the government? So first is with respect to the interest subvention scheme. So these are with respect to the production of ethanol. So first is regarding the interest subvention scheme. Basically this particular scheme was launched in 2018, and what was the purpose of this scheme? To enhance the production capacity of the ethanol blended petrol, ethanol basically. Second is with respect to the GST. GST on ethanol has been reduced from 18% to 5% in India. Now Industries Development Regulation or IDR Act amended to clarify center state roles in the ethanol supply, so that there should be not any kind of policy level confusion. Again, National Biofuels Coordination Committee has adopted or approved use of maize as a feedstock for the ethanol production in 2020. And again, National Policy on Biofuels, which was notified in 2018, this was very comprehensive policy, and what was the aim? To promote the production as well as the use of biofuels, to reduce the reliance on the fossil fuels and enhance the energy security, mitigate the climate change. So these are the various steps taken by the government to promote the production of the ethanol in India and to streamline it basically. So let us go into the practice question. With reference to the ethanol blended petrol program in India, consider the following statement. Please solve this MCQ. Now let us go into the next topic of the day, that is the radioactive horns for the rhinos. So what is the backdrop of this news? Basically, university in South Africa has launched a new project which plans to curb the rhino poaching through the radioactive isotope injections in rhinos. So this particular topic is important from GS3, that is the environmental conservation as well as the biodiversity conservation. So let us go into the details of the news. Basically, South African University launched an anti-poaching campaign with a unique approach, that is injecting radioactive isotopes into the rhino horns. It claimed that method is harmless for the rhinos and allows customs agents to detect the trafficked horns. So basically, there is one university in South Africa which has launched anti-poaching campaign with a unique approach, that is injecting radioactive isotopes into the rhino horns. And what is the method used? Injecting the radioactive isotopes in the rhino horns. And how it would work? Basically, it will allow custom agent to detect the traffic harms because of the radiations that are emerging out of the radioactive horns. So after the 6 years of intense research, University of Witwatersrand, basically supported by the IAEA, that is International Atomic Energy Agency, formally launched Rhisotope project. So let us go into the details of this particular Rhisotope project. What it is exactly? Basically, this particular Rhisotope project is a novel anti-poaching initiative by University of Witwatersrand, supported by the International Atomic Energy Agency, and it will be implemented by the Waterberg Biosphere, implemented at the Waterberg's Biosphere Reserve in the South Africa. What is the project cost? Almost $290,000 US dollar, and for 6 years of scientific research and safety testing. And what is the objective or aim? To deter the rhino poaching by making rhino horns detectable and toxic to the humans without harming the animal. So after the injection of those radioactive isotopes, basically rhino horns not only become detectable at the ports or airports, they will toxic to the humans owing to the radiations that are emerging out of those horns. Now, how radioactive tagging of those horns work? Basically, a non-invasive injection of a low dose of the radioactive isotopes will be given into the rhino horns. So, what is the detection mechanism that will be used for the understanding whether that is whether any kind of rhino horns are being smuggled or not? These tagged horns are become detectable through the radiation portal monitors that are already being installed at most of the airports or borders or ports to track the nuclear materials. So, these radiation portal monitors are already installed at various borders or airports. So, what is the science behind it? Radioisotopes are unstable elements that emit radiation while decaying into the stable form, and this particular emitted radiation is traceable and can trigger the radiation portal monitors. Thus, the authorities will be able to catch the rhinos horns that are being smuggled. So, how this particular testing was done? A 3D printed horns were made of keratin like material were tested. Basically, these rhino horns are in great demand basically in China and Southeast Asia because of their so called utility in the treatments, indigenous treatment methods prevalent in those countries. And how did they did simulation testing with the use of 3D printed horns that were made up of the keratin like materials. Okay. So, it is confirmed that radioactive horns could be detected even inside the large shipping containers. So, the possibility or probability of detection will largely enhanced. So, let us go into the pilot project that has been conducted. Basically, earlier initial trial was conducted in June 2023 with 20 rhinos who were injected in pilot phase, and the team of university, that is the Ghent University in Belgium, conducted the cytological examination of those rhinos which had been injected with the radioactive isotopes, and there was the microscopic analysis was also done to diagnose any kind of disease to the rhinos. It was found that there was no any other harm or health impact because of the radioactive tagging of those rhino horns. So far it has been found that there is no any kind of negative impact on the rhinos because of the radioactive isotopes tagging. So, let us go into certain poaching crisis, that is this crisis statistics with respect to the poaching crisis. Basically, as per the International Union for Conservation of Nature, global rhino population has dropped from 5 lakh in early 1900s to 27,000 today, primarily because of the horn poaching. And as I have already mentioned, the horn poaching is because mainly for the medicine purpose, indigenous medicine purpose, that it is used in the Chinese and Southeast Asian market. Earlier, scientists had tried the method of dehorning or cutting of the horns of the rhinos, but it has been observed that it affects the rhino's normal behavior. So, this method was again abandoned. This particular rhizotope project, which is a less disruptive and can act as a stronger deterrent against the illegal trade of the rhino horns all over the world. So, this is regarding the poaching crisis of the rhinos. Let us go into the practice question of the day. With reference to the rhizotope project, consider the following statements. Please solve this MCQ. Now, let us go into the next topic of the day, that is the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding the Pollution Control Board's power to impose restitutionary damages. So, this particular topic is important from GS3 environmental conservation pollution perspective. Now, let us go into the details of the news. Basically, Supreme Court on Monday gave pollution control boards more teeth by declaring their power to impose and collect restitutionary damages to completely restore the polluted air and water bodies back to the original pristine themselves in the ecosystem. So, basically, Supreme Court on Monday gave pollution control boards of power regarding imposing and collecting of restitutionary damages, that is financial fine, to completely restore the polluted air or water bodies back to their original structure. So, this particular power, what kind of different powers given to the pollution control boards by the Supreme Court ruling? first is with respect to the imposing and collecting the restitutionary and compensatory damages from the companies which are causing environmental damages. Then taking proactive or ex ante measures, demanding like bank guarantees and addressing the potential environmental damages through proactive measures. So, this particular power that has been given by the Supreme Court to the Pollution Control Board is under the Section 33 of the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974 and Section 31A of the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. So, these two powers, what is the statutory backing? That is Air Pollution Control Act and Water Pollution Control Act. So, what was the context of the case in which Supreme Court has given the present ruling? This particular case originated from an appeal filed by the Delhi Pollution Control Committee, a NGO. So, Delhi High Court had earlier held that Delhi Pollution Control Committee could not levy the compensatory damages under the given act. So, earlier what High Court had said that Delhi Pollution Control Board or State Pollution Control Board does not have any kind of authority or power to levy any kind of compensatory damage given under the Water Pollution Act or Water Pollution Control Act or Air Pollution Control Act. So, Supreme Court has overturned this particular decision of the Delhi High Court and affirming wider enforcement of the power given to the Pollution Control Board. So, this is the context of the case under which Supreme Court has given the present ruling. Now, what is the scope of power and enforcement that has been given in detail by the Supreme Court? Pollution Control Boards can now recover the fixed sum as a damages to the any environment or ecosystem. Pollution Control Board can demand bank guarantees in advance to cover the potential pollution that is likely to be caused by any industry or project, and these measures aim to restore the polluted air and water bodies to their original or pristine state. So, what is the basic objective of giving such powers? To restoring the polluted air and water bodies to their original or pristine state. So, this, but at the same time Supreme Court has given certain caveats. So, what are those caveats? These fines that are likely to be imposed, that are going to be imposed by the pollution control boards, these powers have to be executed through the subordinate legislation or rules or regulation that are being created or likely to be regulated by the executive, that is the respective state governments. It will follow the principle of natural justice, that is fair hearing to the company that is going to pay the damage which is being imposed by the state pollution control board. So, pollution control boards hold expansive powers under the Water and Air Pollution Control Act, including authority to shut down or regulate the industries and operations. So, as per the Supreme Court, the state pollution control board or central pollution control boards already have very expansive powers with respect to the shutting down or regulating the industries and their operations, or stop utilities such as electricity, water or other services to the industries that are causing damage to the environment. So, these powers which are being underlined by the Supreme Court gives flexibility to the state pollution control boards to choose the appropriate enforcement mechanism to prevent, control and abate pollution. So, Supreme Court given those powers, has highlighted those powers which are already being given through the Air Pollution Control Act or Water Pollution Control Act to prevent, control and abate pollution. So, this is regarding the scope and enforcement. Now, under this ruling, Supreme Court has given special emphasis on the polluter pays principle. So, industries causing pollution must be held responsible for repairing the environmental damage. So, this is the first rule of the polluter pays principle, and restoration must aim to replicate the original system, ecosystem as closely as possible that has been damaged by the pollution. So, these are the two important principles under the polluter pays principle. Now, let us go into the certain basics. Pollution control boards in India. Basically, the pollution control boards are statutory bodies tasked with preventing, controlling and abating pollution. So whether it is a central pollution control board or a state pollution control board, what is their objective? Prevention of, control of and abatement of the pollution is, and what is the statutory backing? Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974 and the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. So these are the statutory backings. Now let us go into the Central Pollution Control Board, CPCB. It was set up in 1974 under the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974. So what is its function? It advises the central government and serve as a technical arm of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Okay, and monitors the environmental quality and enforces the pollution control norms. So what are the functions or duty of the Central Pollution Control Board? Monitoring of the environmental quality of the India as well as enforcing the pollution control norms that are being given under the various Pollution Control Act. It also sets the emission standards and promotes the clean air and water for the citizens. When it comes to the Central Pollution Control Boards, its powers or functions were further expanded under the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act and Environmental Protection Act under 1986. So these are the statutory backings of the Central Pollution Control Board from which it derives its power. Now let us go into the State Pollution Control Board. Basically, these are formed in each state to enforce the Water Prevention Control Pollution Act 1974 and Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. They are responsible for pollution control within the state jurisdictions. Okay. And in union territories, Central Pollution Control Boards may take over the SPCB roles or delegate them to the respective union territory. So this is with respect to the State Pollution Control Board. Now let us go into the practice question of the day. With reference to the Pollution Control Board in India, consider the following statement. Please solve this MCQ. Now let us go into the important topic of the day, that is decoded 6 years without Article 370. So what is the backdrop of the news? Basically today on 5th August, 6 years completed for the abrogation of the Article 370 from Jammu Kashmir. And what is the relevance? Important from the GS2 issues and challenges pertaining to the federal structure of the India as well as the GS3 internal security. Now let us go into the detail of the news. Basically, it is now 6 years since the abrogation of Article 370 and reorganization of the Jammu Kashmir into 2 union territories. Basically, this particular abrogation of the Article 370, which was also upheld by the Supreme Court, was turned as a turning point aimed at bringing peace, development and deeper integration of the Kashmir into the rest of India. Since then, the political activity has resumed in Jammu and Kashmir with a new government advocating for the full statehood. Basically, at present Jammu Kashmir is the union territory with legislative assembly, and the present government which has been incumbent in the Jammu Kashmir has been advocating for the restoration of the full statehood of the Jammu Kashmir. But at the same time, the heinous Pahalgam terror attack has added new dimension to the security question to the present status of the Jammu Kashmir. Now let us go into certain basics or historical aspect of the Article 370. Basically, Article 370 of the Indian Constitution provided the Jammu Kashmir with special autonomous status. Okay, so what were the provisions under this special autonomous status? It allowed the Jammu Kashmir to have their own constitution, and limited legislative powers were granted to the outlining resident rights. So outsiders, citizens of the Jammu Kashmir, means the citizens which were not from the Jammu Kashmir, they were given very limited rights. Next is with respect to the separate constitution. The state was authorized to have its own constitution and flag. So until 2019, Jammu Kashmir was having their own constitution along with Indian constitution and was having their own flag. Limited central authority. Basically, Indian Parliament's legislative power over Jammu and Kashmir were restricted to defense, foreign affairs and communications. So as per the Article 370 provisions, the Indian Parliament's legislative power with respect to the Jammu Kashmir were related to only 3 parts, that is defense, foreign affairs and communication. Article 35A derived from Article 370, basically this particular article 35A, it gave the state legislature power to define the permanent residents and granting them exclusive rights such as land ownership and various rights related to property. So, this was again very controversial article under the article 370. 370. This is the present status of the Jammu Kashmir, that is Jammu Kashmir Union Territory, Ladakh Union Territory. So, what are the changes that happened since the abrogation of the article 370? Politics. Let us go into the first political aspects. There is a return to the democratic presentation, but with curtailed powers. So, since as I already mentioned, as of now, instead of full statehood, there is a union territory in the Jammu Kashmir with a legislative assembly. So, the democratic representation has been partially restored with curtailed powers. As of now, the control over police and services lies with the lieutenant governor, limiting the authority of the elected dispensation. So, let us go into the differences or what are the prominent changes that happened after and abrogation of article 370. So, what were the condition before and what are the conditions now? Let us go into the comparison. So, in case before the abrogation of article 370, Jammu Kashmir had its own constitution. Now, Jammu Kashmir follows Indian constitution. When it comes to control over law and order, it was earlier under the state government. Now, law and order is under the lieutenant governor of the Jammu Kashmir, that is under center. Legislative powers, basically earlier extensive power given to the Jammu Kashmir state legislative assembly except in defense, foreign, finance and communication. As of now, Jammu Kashmir state assembly is given very limited powers and parliament and lieutenant government holds more power or overwhelming power with respect to different aspects. When it comes to application of central laws, earlier before abrogation of 370, there was a need of state government's concurrence for application of any central law in the state of Jammu Kashmir. Now, it is automatically applicable. When it comes to land and property rights, earlier there were special rights for the permanent residents. Now, there are no such any kind of provisions with respect to special rights. And power balance, CM earlier had more authority, now LG has a overriding authority. So, these are the prominent changes that had happened in different aspects of the administration after the abrogation of the 370. Now, let us go into the challenges, political challenges in the political sector that are being faced by the Jammu Kashmir. Basically, as of now, the political dynamics of the state is marred by the tension and compromises. This can be seen with the fact that Chief Minister of Jammu Kashmir on July 13 had decided to celebrate the Martyrs' Day and attempted visit to graves of the protest victims despite the police resistance, which highlights the strained relationship between the centre and Jammu Kashmir UT government. So, basically July 13 in Jammu Kashmir is celebrated on large scale as a Martyrs' Day. So, what is the history? I will go into brief. Basically, it is observed on July 13 every year, and it commemorates the killing of 22 people by the forces of Dogra ruler Maharaja Hari Singh in 1931. And this event is pivotal moment in Kashmir's history, as seen by many as the beginning of political resistance movement against the autocratic rule of Dogra ruler Maharaja Hari Singh in 1931. So, it's kind of pre-independence thing, that is the killing of people, and it also considered as the start of political resistance by the people of Jammu Kashmir against the erstwhile Dogra ruler. Now, let us go into the security aspects of the present status or present time. When it comes to terror violence, there has been a significant decline in the terror violence. In year 2025, so far only 28 terrorists have been killed against the 157 that terrorists that have been killed in 2019. So, please see the contrast. In 2019, there were 157 terrorists were killed. In 2025, only 28 terrorists have been. Local recruitment of terrorists has dropped from 129 in 2019 to just 1 in 2025. Civilian deaths have reduced to 26 this year, all in the Pahalgam attack, and whereas in 2019, 57 civilians were killed. So, this shows the declining trend of the violence. Reduction in the street unrest. Basically, before the abrogation of Article 370, especially in 2007, 8 and 9, there were huge incidences of stone pelting, hartals, abductions, weapon snatching. Now, those incidents have fallen to zero. Jammu region now reports very few encounters and cross-border incursions as compared to the pre-2019 era. Now, what are the challenges to the normalcy when it comes to security situation? Pahalgam attack of April 2025 that killed 26 civilians exposed lapses in the security preparedness even in the tourist zones. Basically, earlier the tourist zones used to be considered safe for the tourists because Kashmir's local economy was dependent on the tourism sector heavily. So, basically earlier tourists were quite hesitant or reluctant to attack the tourist, as they were also needing the supports of local for their survival and executing the attack. But this time they have left all those kind of tactics and directly attack tourist in the Pahalgam, Baisaram Valley. Now, let us go into the economic aspects. Basically, when it comes to economics, new industrial scheme was launched to attract the private investment. I will go into the brief what about this new industrial scheme. It was basically almost 25,000 crore initiative by Government of India. In this particular, capital investments subsidy was given to the remote areas for investment, capital investment. Again, interest subsidy was given or on the capital loans for the investment. Again, GST linked incentives were given. Working capital interest subvention scheme was also announced for working capital units up to the 5 years. So, the various financial incentives given to the industries to set up or to enhance the industrial manufacturing capacity in the Jammu Kashmir. As of now, today proposed investment in Jammu Kashmir are almost 1.63 lakh crore, of which 50,000 crore investment projects are in various stages of implementation. More than 350 industrial units are operational, more than 1400 units are nearing completion. Investment realization in 2024-25 is 10 times higher than the pre-2020 levels. So, this is important point, that investment realization in 2024 is 10 times the pre-2020 levels. So, what are the challenges? Basically, one of the most important requirement for any industry or manufacturing unit is energy. And when it comes to Jammu Kashmir, it is an energy deficient state, especially in the winter. Its 3,500 megawatt installed capacity drops to almost 600 or 650 megawatt. Thus, it becomes heavily dependent on the central allocations. Financial health. Jammu Kashmir Bank, which was almost facing 1100 crore loss in 2019, now in the profit of 1700 crore, and NPA levels have almost been halved. When it comes to what are the challenges with respect to the Jammu Kashmir as a state, fiscal deficit remains high and almost 70% of spending reliant on the central grants. Core sectors like agriculture and industry contributes very less than the services. Basically, this agriculture and industry are employment intensive sectors, and whereas tourism sector is relatively less employment generating. So, core sectors are lagging behind as compared to the services. When it comes to revenue, tax revenue growth, GST between 2022 and 24, GST was collection was up by 12%, excise collection was up by 40%. Overall non-tax revenue was increased by 25%, and GDP growth from 1,17,000 crore in 2015 to 2,63,000 crore in 2024-25. It is more than doubled in last 10 years. When it comes to power sector, basically more than 5 lakh smart meters have been installed, reducing the transmission and distribution losses by almost 25%. And power generation in this Jammu Kashmir is expected to double by December 2026. Nearly 10,000 crore invested in the power transmission and distribution, and as well as for the infrastructure upgrade by the central government in Jammu Kashmir. When it comes to tourism scenario, there has been in 2023 there was a record tourism. 2 crore 11 lakh tourists visited, highest ever in 1 year, and tourism contributed to the 7% of the J&K GDP. In case of India, it is just 5% share. So this is one difference between tourism sector share. When it comes to infrastructure and outreach, more than 75 new tourist destinations have been opened by the J&K government, and nearly 2000 homestays have been registered or opened, especially in the remote villages. Now let's go into the challenge aspect. What are the challenges to the tourism? Basically, security setback, gaps in the risk assessment and weak seasonal guidelines, especially in the high altitude conflict prone zones, remain a major challenges to the tourism sector. Again, the Pahalgam attack led to the lockdown of 50 tourist spots in the different areas of the Kashmir. When it comes to private investment in the tourism sector, only 5 hotels have joined the new industrial scheme, represents the limited or very limited success of the new industrial scheme. Again, lack of suitable land is cited as the key barrier to the investment by the various private players. So what are the response measure? Security review launched post attack, post Pahalgam attacks, and again 16 destinations reopened. Adventure tourism is now restricted to the areas with only strong security presence. So now let's go into the conclusion part. Basically, the Pahalgam incident is a sobering reminder that despite the downward trend in the militancy, the threat of the terrorism has not disappeared. So Pahalgam attack was a very stark reminder for the Indian security establishment that the terrorism and its threat to the common Indian citizen has not been disappeared. So government sees tourism as a economic lever and tool for the youth engagement. Despite this heinous attack of the Pahalgam, government sees the tourism sector in Jammu Kashmir as a vital economic lever and tool for youth engagement. So this is the practice question. 6 years after the abrogation of Article 370, Jammu Kashmir has seen a progress and developments and security, but challenges remain in the political autonomy and stability. Critically analyze. Please write the answer of this question. This is all for the day. Thank you.